because reminds me of what Mark said, because there were actually others, Steve Biko,
Walter Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, is it Mangosuthu? Was Mangosuthu Beatles one of them?
Yes.
No, okay. Then there was one again that was not really part of the movement, but he was also that popular. His name was he was also killed. But these guys were actually the arrowheads of the struggle. And I remember there was a place I read, you know, they used to sneak into their homes at night with the elder Thalbo, Mbeki's dad. And I think this particular Mbeki was a boy then, the former president of South Africa. And his father and Mandela and their group will sneak in to the homes at night, see their children, exchange whatever.
They were young boys then.
Yes, and run back into the bushes because they were wanted.
So I'm trying to relate that to young Africans as we speak every time we talk about young African leaders, because these were actually young people before they got into school, and they kept the dream alive, and they also went to school, they studied hard, even though some of them also took to some sporting events, activities here and there. But that was a boxer.
Exactly.
So the hopes and the dreams was never cut off, irrespective of what they went through in jail.
No. From what I read about Nelson Mandela in his book, The Walk to Freedom, you see, I was inspired. The best dreamers are youths. When you dream as a youth, your dream is unencumbered. You are inspired to dream. But then there is a cliche to it. The leadership at your time and the happenstances at your time, you know, they mold the kind of dreams you have. So all you need to do is to have leaders who point you in the right direction as a youth, and your exuberance and the life force in you will take you there. Because when I dream today, I don't dream as, you know, my dreams are not as undiluted as they were when I was 17. When I was 17, I just saw possibilities. I never saw limitations. And believe me, if you just point children in the right direction, they will owe you. I'll give you a small example in Nigeria. I was scared stiff, but I was still awed when I saw an 11 or is it a 12-year-old boy who had so much life force and drive in his dream that he was prepared to hang on the wheels of an aircraft to get there. Unfortunately, the aircraft landed in Lagos.
Unfortunately, he was alive.
Yes. You see, one thing about inspiration is somewhere the life force that will drive you there comes. Somebody thought about going to the moon and probably felt this guy is out of his mind. But when you dream and you are inspired, I don't know what you call it. We call it a miracle, but there is this thing they said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So if we see leaders who inspire us, believe you me, we have enough youths who will set on course. Now look at this. Mandela has passed on. He has ascended today or yesterday. Can you imagine how many South African youths will be inspired by this man and all he stood for? So we can say as many Mandelas are already in the wings. Okay? As many Mandelas are already in the wings. People who will grow to treasure peace, people who will grow to stand for equality, people who will grow to talk about truth. And they can only grow because they've already been pointed in the right direction. Conversely, if you have a leadership deficit, you are going to see the children, the youths imbibe just that. Because we tend to believe our leaders can't go wrong.
Talking about leaders going wrong, when he left office in 1999, he was regarded as an ideal head of state. But he was also described as a man who was quick to admit his shortcomings. And having admitted, it made him more amenable to the people could now relate with him.
Yes.
What can be there from that kind of life?
I recall reading somewhere one of the reasons he turned down the offer to continue for life was he said he hadn't really made up with his children, that he doesn't really know them. When most children were having their dad and their mom attend events at school, his own children never had a dad to represent them at school. So you can imagine, I don't know how, he lost his son somewhere along the line, I think the only son.
Yeah. Yes.
And that left Zinzi and I think one other or so, but he never really had time with them. Then here he was out of prison with grandchildren already.
So he was adequately compensated?
Yes, you want to take the rest of it again. I mean, give me some time to reconcile, make up with them for the last time.
I think that reminds me of what he said in 2004,
yes.
A famous statement from him while he was leaving public office. He said, "Don't call me, I'll call you."
Exactly.
And everyone chuckled.
Exactly. Don't
and he never interfered.
Yes, he never did. But I can assure you, he was like the president behind the scene. Because when you have that kind of figure in a country, you can disagree all you want to disagree in the hallowed chambers of the house, and later in the day you will drag yourselves to him, and he will be able to say, "No, Sule, you shouldn't have done it that way. Nyota, next time try to moderate it this way. Now the two of you get back in there and do it right." That's the kind of thing we want here today in this country.
Define a statesman for us, because
yes.
Growing up in this country, we've heard so many stories about people they have called statesmen, and we'll put them side by side with the definition of what statesman is, with people like Nelson Mandela. I think we can hardly count 2 or 3 statesmen in our country.
Do we really have statesmen? I, for one, I come from a generation that was robbed of its youth. I say robbed of its youth because visibly today you can see a lot of our youths unemployed. And we have septuagenarians and octogenarians still in service earning. One of my aunties put it this way. She said, if from 5 boys do not graduate, how can from 1 go to from 2? What we mean is if SS3 have refused to graduate, then how will JS1 go to JS2? So we are seeing a stagnation. Elder statesmanship is about my dad being able to take the back seat and say, "Hey, you sit there and drive this car. You can't be big for nothing, eating my food in my house and I have to drive you around." We should be doing it, not the elders. The elders can sit back at home and settle our differences when we drag ourselves before them. So we are beginning to see, there's that deficit.
And he never played tribal politics, even though we know in South Africa there are also tribes and ethnic nationalities.
Mandela came from a very symbolic family that had every reason to be tribal. Okay? Mandela is a prince. His father was a king. But I can tell you something. When you are talking about politics at the national level, there is no religion, there is no ethnicity, there is really nothing. Let me give you an example. The Nigerian president is actually a personification of this country. With all due respect to the different religions, his first belief should be Nigeria. If you are going to him to talk religion, you're talking to the wrong person. If you're going to him to talk ethnicity, you're talking to the wrong person. But if you're going to him to talk Nigeria, then you are home. But we're not seeing that. And those are the things that rob us of that leverage, of that synergy, which we can come together and infuse and create one very strong brand of a country. We have everything it takes. So Mandela should be one very good reference point, especially where morality is involved. When we talk about corruption, when we talk about structural and infrastructural deficits as we see them, it's all about, a dearth of morality. Yes. So Mandela is indeed a moral brand. That's the way I want to put it.